Today's daf is Avoda Zara 74. Mishnah. Eilu asurim ve'oisim b'chol shehu. The following materials are forbidden, and any amount of them renders other items with which they become mixed forbidden. Yain nesech, wine that was used for libation of idolatry, of Avoda Zara, an item of idolatry. V'oiris levuvin, hides with a tear opposite the heart, indicating the idolatrous practice of sacrificing hearts of live animals. The shar niskal, an ox that has been condemned to be stoned, from which it is prohibited to derive benefit even before its sentence is carried out. The egla arufa, also a heifer whose neck is broken when a person is found killed in an area between two cities and the murderer is unknown, which is likewise forbidden from the time it is taken down to the river to be killed. In these cases, if the animal becomes mixed in a herd of similar animals, all of the animals in the herd are forbidden. V'tzipurei metzoira. Furthermore, this halacha applies to birds designated for the purification of a leper, usa'ar nazir, and the shorn hair of a Nazarite, upeter chamor, and a firstborn donkey, ubasar becholov. Now, firstborn donkey is before the pediya, by the way. Okay, Rashi points that out. Peter Chamor, the Osur Bahno Kozman Shelo Nifto. Okay. Ubasu Becholov, Rashi points out, that means a mixture of meat and milk, but it doesn't mean if a little milk fell into meat, then it'll be bottled, probably, depending on the amount. But it means that if something was cooked, milk and meat together, Zara says, so that's, and then you take that mixture, and then you want to mix it with something else, so it's got, even kosher, any amount of that is going to render something else forbidden. Usir mishtaleach shel Yom Kippurim. Furthermore, a scapegoat of Yom Kippur. V'chulin shenishchatu b'Zara, and a non-sacred animal that was slaughtered in the temple courtyard. Harei elu asurin ve'oisrin b'chol shehu. These items are forbidden, and any amount of them renders a mixture forbidden. Gemara, Tano mai kuchashiv. So according to what criterion does the Tana who teaches the Mishnah reckon cases? What's the point of the Mishnah? What's the focus of the group, of the list? Is the list focusing on items that are counted? Any item that is significant enough to be considered individually, which therefore cannot be nullified in a mixture, even in a very large majority of permitted items. So something that's counted individually is considered very important. It's, let's say, just say difficult to be mevatalit in a mixture. Is that the focus? So lisni nami chasichos nevela. So then it should have mentioned also pieces of meat. And according to our Mishnah, at least the author of our Mishnah, a nevela is not something that would be considered. No, a nevela, a piece of meat, would be considered something that is davar shebaminyan as well. And then if that's what's important, so why wasn't that listed in our list of the Mishnah? If our Mishnah is focusing on things that are forbidden to get any pleasure from, which would not be a case of nevela. A nevela, you're allowed to sell it, but you're not allowed to eat it. So if the focus is not on something that is counted individually, but rather on something that's asur b'hana, forbidden to get pleasure from, then listening nami chametz b'pesach, then the Mishnah should have said also chametz b'pesach, any amount is going to be a problem to be vatalit. So Amar Rabbi Yechia bar Abba v'itema Rabbi Yitzchak nafcha hoitano tarti islay. Our Mishnah is focusing on two requirements, davar shebaminyan ve'isur hano, saying that you need, our author of Mishnah is saying you need to have both things. It has to be something that is individually counted, and that it's forbidden to get any pleasure from such a thing. If it has both qualifications, then it's something that any amount will not be nullified. Miritu Rashi, Tarti Isle, Dover Shebeminyan V'Yisur Hano. Deiko Tarti the Chashivuso, there are two things that make it important. The Chashiv Isur Ditu, who, the Lobatil. First of all, it's something that makes this Isur important. It's not Mevatel. Of a Chometz, but a piece of Chometz, Prusa, a little piece of bread of Chometz, Bepesach, Hoyo Ve'ein Darko Limnos Batil. Since a piece of bread on Pesach, according to this author, would be batil because a piece of bread is not something counted by itself. So it would be mevatel. Umashlich echod mehen lenar. So what do? If it mixes a slice of bread, a piece of bread, into something from Pesadik, and so what you do is you throw away one of the pieces that you have. Let's say you can't tell between a piece of chametz and a piece of matzah. I've heard once that in the olden days the matzah looked more like pita bread. Let's say you got mixed up one of them, so you throw one of them into the river, and the rest you can feed it to your dogs. So you're getting hana from it. So it's not a problem. Even though there's a mixture of chametz in there, you can still get hana as long as you throw one slice of what may be bread or maybe matzah into the river. And if you have a piece of meat that was not shechted properly, even though a piece of meat is something you count individually, if you go to a store, you can buy a piece of meat as an individual piece of meat. A slice of bread, you don't buy a slice of bread, you buy a loaf of bread normally. But a meat, you'll buy a piece of meat. So it's a davar sheminyan, it's chashuv, but it's not asur b'ano. Given the lav Yisra Anohu, since a piece of meat, a tray for meat, is not asur b'ano, you're allowed to buy it and sell it, make money, apparently. Bat lo berubo. So according to our Mishnah, at least that's the opinion of our Mishnah, I'm not sure that's la locho. I think I heard not like that. Well, in some of this is not like that, at least according to our shir, I heard Rabbi Bamberger. But be that as it may, that seems to be, this is the opinion of our Mishnah according to Rashi, that a piece of meat, since it's not asur b'ano, who bat lo berubo, it'll become bat lo berov. It's interesting. According to Rashi, at least according to our view of our Mishnah that Rashi explains, if you take one piece of meat that's not shechted, it's treif, it's a kosher animal, but it wasn't shechted, it was shot or something. So then, and you take that piece of meat, which is a bunch of kosher meats, so what do? According to our Mishnah author, you take one piece of meat, you're not sure which is the one that was treif, you take one piece, you throw it in the river, or you throw it to the dogs, and the rest of it you can eat. Shari b'achila. Interesting. Okay. Anyways, food for thought, huh? Pun intended. Okay, weiter. Velisni egozi ferech v'rimoni badan. Why don't we list also in this list perech nuts and badan pomegranates? The davar shebeminyan v'yisur hananhu. Those two items are important enough that they're sold individually, and also they're asur b'ano if they are, which was what the question is, what we're dealing with, if they're kloi kerem, if they came from a field that was a mixture of forbidden mixtures, somehow it grew in a forbidden mixtures, or it was erla, means it was within the first 3 years of growth. Okay. Hotano lei hosam. So the Gemara says that's not a problem because even though those would make the list here, but they're already taught in a separate Mishnah in Orla 3:7, where it says Haroi la Orla, Haroi la Kloya Kerem, Kloya HaKerem. So over there it already deals with this issue as far as says the Mishnah taught that case there, where perech nuts and badan pomegranates are listed among the forbidden items that cannot be nullified in a mixture. And it is stated with regards to such items that those items to which the prohibition of Orla applies render the entire mixture forbidden by imparting to it the status of Orla, while those to which the prohibition of diverse kinds applies in a vineyard render the mixture forbidden by imputing to it the status of diverse kinds planted in a vineyard. Therefore, it is unnecessary to mention the items here. Weiter. Velisni kikara shel balabais. What about listing loaves of a homeowner, each of which is unique and significant? Le'inyan chametz bepesach, with regards to the prohibition against deriving benefit from leavened bread on Passover. So, in other words, this is davar shebeminyan hu v'isur hana. Chametz is asur hana, and these loaves that are made by homeowner are davar shebeminyan. So you have both qualities. So in the context of Pesach, maybe you should list loaves of a homeowner. So the Gemara says, Man shmas de Omer Law. Who is it that you hear who says that loaves are not nullified in a mixture? Who is this opinion that says that is in fact not nullified in a mixture? Rabbi Akiva, that's Rabbi Akiva's view. Hatana lehosam. This is taught by Rabbi Akiva, and he taught it there in Tractate Orla, where it says, Rabbi Akiva moisif afki korasho balabais. Rabbi Akiva adds to the list the loaves of a homeowner, so it's been dealt with, and therefore it does not need to be dealt with again. It says in the Mishnah, at the end of the Mishnah here, the Tana reiterates the halacha stated at the beginning, saying, all of these are forbidden themselves, and any amount of them renders a mixture forbidden. The Gemara asks, the purpose of this reiteration, is to exclude what? Harei elu lemeute mai. Lemeute davar shebeminyan v'lav isur hano, inami lemeute isur hano v'lo davar shebeminyan. So it means it's repeating it to exclude, to make clear. The author of this Mishnah wants you to know that if something is something that is counted individually, but is not asur b'hano, or the reverse, it's asur b'hano, but it's not counted individually, therefore will not make this list, and will not be an item that any amount of which will render the mixture to be forbidden, except for the items that we mentioned that are taught separately in Orla, one according to Rabbi Akiva, and the other a certain nut and a certain pomegranate. Weiter. Mishnah. Yain nesach shenafal lebar. If in the case of a wine used for libation that fell into a wine cistern, kula asur behano, it is prohibited to derive benefit from all of the wine in the cistern, even if the volume of the wine used for libation was tiny in comparison to the volume of the wine in the cistern. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Oimer, Shimon Gamliel says, Yimocher kulo legoy, chutz midmei yain nesach shebo. Shimon Gamliel says, sell everything to a goy except for the value of the yain nesach, of the wine that's libation that fell into it. Amar Rav said, halacha, the law is, like Rav Shimon Gamliel, chavis bechavios, but only in a case where you take one barrel of yain nesach with a bunch of barrels, the kosher wine, and then what do? As long as you can sell everything minus the value of one barrel, and then you're allowed to keep that money. In other words, the value, if it's you have 100 barrels, and one of the barrels is each one is worth $1, so sell the whole thing for $99 instead of the normal value of 100, or take one of the dollars, throw it in the river. Ava lo yain b'yayin. But according to Rav Shimon Gamliel never meant that if you mix wine with wine, if you mix wine with wine, yain nesach with good wine, that is not something that you can just say sell everything except for the value of the wine that fell in. Shimon Gamliel, according to Rav Shimon Gamliel never would have allowed that. He only allows it in the case of barrels. However, Shmuel Amar, Afil Yain b'yayin, v'chen Amar Rav Rechana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Afil Yain b'yayin, v'chen Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar Rabbi Yochanino, Afil Yain b'yayin, v'chen Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Ravu, But all these other rabbis, they say that Rishon Gamliel meant even if you mix wine of a libation with kosher wine, you can sell the whole thing except for the value of the wine of libation. Even though the liquids are mixing, it's not a problem. Amar of Nachman said, halacha l'maaseh, practical halacha is yain nesech yain miyayin. If you have is asur. If you have wine that was actually used for libation and it mixed with kosher wine, so then you cannot do anything with that stuff. Forget it. It's asur b'ano. Okay. Yain nesech mamish, real yain nesech. Chavis bechavis, muter b'ano. If you mix a barrel with a barrel, then you're allowed to get hana from it, except for the value of one chavis, of one barrel. But if it was wine with wine, it's all forbidden, get any pleasure from. Stam yain, however, if it's not wine that was used for libation, but just wine that was touched by a goy, but you have no reason to think it was used for libation, realistically, so then, afilu yain b'yain mutter. So if stam yain mixes with kosher wine, you can sell the whole thing and make money off of it. Actually, minus the value of the stam yain. In other words, you can sell the whole thing minus, let's say it's $5 worth of stam yainim that got mixed in, so you deduct $5 from the sale price, or you take $5 after the sale and you throw it in the water. Weiter Mishnah. Gat shel even shezivsa goy. So if you have a vat made out of stone that was covered with pitch, was like a tar, by the non-Jew, covered it with the tar. And what happened? And as normally happens, the goy took some wine to put it over the tar to take away some of the stench of the tar. So now this is like a vat where it's going to hold wine. So in order to make it more resilient, maybe not to lose stuff, they would tar it up, cover it with a tar, like a lining. So, but after putting the tar, because it smells, they would put some wine to take away the sharpness of the tar smell. In any event, now you bought it, and you want to make sure it's kosher. So how do you handle that? So menagvo. So what you do is a niguv. Now what is a niguv? A niguv is a sort of, basically, practically what it means is you are going to be rinsing it with ashes and water, okay? So it's like, let's just call it an ash water rinse. That's menagvo. Vehi tahoira. Once you do that, the ash water mixture, then it is pure. You don't have to worry about it. You can use it now. That's if it's made out of stone. What if it's made out of wood, vishal eitz? Now if it's made out of eitz, Rashi says it needs more pitch, more tar, in order to make it properly functionable. And it absorbs more wine in the tar, through the tar, but it's maybe because it absorbs more wine, you need more tar. The point is it's more tarred up. So what's the story if you have a wood vat made with tar? Rabbi Yomer, and you want to make a kosher now. Rabbi Yomer Yenagev. Now, by saying Yenagev, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is saying, do the ash water rinse, just like we said, by the stone vat, and you're good to go. But the rabbis don't agree. The rabbis say if you have a vat made out of wood and you want to make a kosher, you're going to have to peel away the tar and basically tar it up again, fresh tar. Now, the third option is that it's made out of cheres, clay. So it's not stone, it's not wood, but rather clay, some kind of a clay material, like a porcelain. Afal pi shekolaf es hazefet harizasura. And the Mishnah says that even if you peel away the tar, if the vat is made out of clay, it's not going to be kosher. Apparently, this is everybody's opinion. And Rashi says the reason is because had there been not any tar in it, it would have absorbed the wine. Okay, the other items also, so I don't know, maybe more than the wood. Be that as it may, the halacha is here in our Mishnah, apparently everybody's view, but that's only a havamina, is that if it's made out of clay, then you are unable to kosher it. Okay, now let's see the Gemara. Amar Rava said, Dafka Zifta. Rava said as follows, that the requirement to cleanse the winepress applies specifically if the Gentile lined it with pitch, with tar. And that's what we were talking about. We were talking about a case where it was tarred. So Rava is telling us this idea to cleanse it is when it has tar in it. Aval dorachba. However, if the goy only tried grapes in it without lining it with tar, so then you do not need to clean it up to kosher it. Okay, aval dorachba Allah. Pshita, says the Gemara. Isn't that normal? Isn't that obvious? I mean, it said zofta, where it's tarred up, Tani. So apparently, only when it's tarred up, you have to kosher this way. Otherwise, it's presumably, it doesn't have that. The tar apparently is what created the absorption. Otherwise, it's just natural and nothing happens. It's just stone or whatever it is. So the Gemara says that Ma'udetema, I would have thought Huadin Afilo Dorachba. I would have thought the halach is the same, even if the guy just used it to press grapes, but he never tarred it up with a lining. That you still have to kasher it up. V'hoidektani zofza, and where it says that the guy lined it with tar, urcha de mil soktani. The Mishnah is only telling me what normally happens. But I would have thought that maybe you still have to do the same cleaning process, whether with a tar or without a tar. Kamash malan, that no. According to Rava's view, if it was not tarred, then you do not need to do anything to kosher it. You do not need to do anything to kosher it. That's apparently what Rava is, the way Rava is reading the Mishnah. Dafka, when it was tarred. If it's not tarred, there's nothing to worry about. That seems to be the situation. Apparently, you're not aware of any libation specifically done there. It's only that apparently just that it was handled by a guy, and handled by a guy, maybe apparently his view is, it seems to be, that whatever it is that you're concerned is, as long as you, at least in the case where in the Mishnah, it says, remember we had some different examples in Mishnah. Apparently we're talking about when it's made out of stone, which is where we said you can do a cleaning with ash and water. And so Gad shel Evan Shezifta, which was tarred. So at least in that case, Rav is saying that if it was made out of stone, that if it's tarred, so you have to go through that ash and water process, and that's what Rav is saying. But if it was only used but not tarred, you wouldn't have to go through the cleaning process. To be clear, I think I may have said it a little bit wrong. So Amar Rava dafka zofso avadarach ba. If it was just used without tarring it, you don't have to go through the cleaning process. And apparently he's talking about the case of Evan, and maybe, according to Rebbe, even the case of eights, because Rebbe is the only one who allows koshering by eights, and he says that it can be done in the same manner. So, but whatever it is, their leniencies, it's only in a case where they were tarred. If they were not tarred, you don't even have to bother with that. Havamina, I would have thought that it makes no difference, and that either Tanakam or Rebbe, in the respective cases, would say you have to go through the cleaning process regardless, and this is just Urcha de Milsa to tell you that people normally tar it, but Kamashmal and Rava, that no, that halacha specifically only applies when it's tarred. Pshita. So that's to read again. Rava, Amar Rava, Dafko Zivso, Avadorach Poif was used to press grapes. Lo, Pshita is an obvious. Zivso Tanan is not what it says. Malatem, I would have thought. I would have thought even if it was not pitched with tar, but rather just pressed grapes, still have to go through a cleaning process. Zivso, and why does it mention Zivso? Orcha de Milso Ktani Kamashmalo, and I would have thought maybe the Mishnah is just telling me what normally happens. But no, says Rava, that's specifically halacha where it was pitched. As I would have thought maybe it's just telling me the Urcha de Milsa that happens to be that when they pitch it, they put some wine in it. Otherwise, maybe... But the law is the same regardless, but it's not the same, according to Rava. Okay, anyways. Weiter. Says the pitching, maybe the water pudding. Rash talks about the wine pudding. But either way, you see that Rava is telling you that's a diuk. Ika de Amr is another way to give the story of what Rava was saying, which is actually like the opposite, essentially, as you'll see in a moment. So Amar Rava said as follows... Dafko Zivsa, our Mishnah is talking about specifically where you put tar in it. Aval Dorach Ba Lo Sagilo Beniguv. However, that's Rava is talking about says only where you put tar in it, but you did not actually trample grapes in it. You only pitched it. So if you only pitched it, but after pitching you didn't trample grapes on it, that's what we're talking about, says Rava. Aval dorach ba. However, if the goy also, after tarring it, he also went ahead and trampled grapes in it, lo sagi lo beniguv, then the ash water solution is not going to be a solution to kasher it. Pshita. Isn't that obvious? Zavso Tanan, it says in our Mishnah only Zavso. He tarred it. It doesn't say he tarred it and he used it for trampling grapes. But I would have thought to Adin, I would have thought the law is the same, whether he only tarred it or he tarred it and then he used it by trampling grapes. He's off. And why does the Mishnah only mention that he tarred it? It doesn't say that he used it to trample grapes. It's just telling you what's normal. Kamash Malan, that Dafka Zavsa, to tell you no, that's specifically it's telling you that it was only Zavsa, it was only tarred and not used to trample on. It's not just telling you that this is what people normally do. It's telling you specifically this was done and nothing else. If the guy also used it to trample grapes on it, it is not going to be sufficient to wash it with ash and water in order to kasher it. So you see two views of what Rava meant to say. Weiter. Also like the person who came in front of Rabbi Chia Marley and said to him, I bought a vat from a guy, Havli Gavra, de medachili me'atzar toi. Give me, please, a person who will purify my wine press that I may purchase, that I purchase from a goy. Amalei, the rabbi said to him, to Rav, Zil bahadei v'chazi de lo matzvach alai b'midrash. He told Rav, you go do the kashering for this gentleman. Make sure that they don't complain to me in the base medrash. Make sure you make me proud. Make me proud, please. Also, chazye dehava shutfei. So Rav went to the wine press and he saw that it was very smooth. Everything looked beautiful. The tar was nice and smooth. Amar, he said, Hovadai beniguv sagila. I'm sure that it's enough to take some ash and water and wash it down, and we're good to go. As he was going around through the wine press, Chaza Pilo, he saw a crack, Metute from below, V'chazadava Molech Chamra, and he saw that it was full of. He saw a crack underneath his feet, and saw that it was full of wine. So that was a problem. So Amar, he said, Halo sagi la beniguv ella bekiluf. He said, I made a mistake. It's not going to be enough to take ash and water for this situation. This is going to require peeling of the tar. V'hainu d'amar li chabibi. And that is what my chabibi told me. Who is his chabibi? His chabibi is his uncle. Means his uncle, says Faria. This is what his uncle told him. Don't create a situation where I'm going to get screamed at in Beis Medrash. So make me proud. Make sure you're careful. And he was careful. The rabbis taught Hagat ve'amechetz ve'amishpach shogoyim. So it says the mechetz. The gat is a wine press. The mechetz is like a ladle, a kli that they take out from the pit to the bore, a ladle basically. And the fun of amishpach shogoyim, which belong to Gentiles. And the Rashi says b'shel cheres askin. We're talking about that they're made out of clay. Mektani seifa shel eitz, because at the end it's going to say that shel eitz out of wood, shel evan and out of stone. So right now we're talking about out of clay, and we're talking about that these things b'she'ei mezufafos askinan, they have not been tarred, because we're going to see later the seifa it says ve'imen mezufafos, if they were tarred, chal de kulareisha b'she'ei mezufafos. So right here in the beginning of this brisa that we're bringing, we're dealing with that they're made out of clay, and they're not tarred. So what about these things? Rebbe matir beniguv. Rebbe said it's okay to wash it with ash and water. And later on it's going to ask, didn't we say earlier that in the Mishnah that a vat, if it's made out of clay, even if you peel it, it's treif, it's no good. And we said a havamina, apparently that's everybody's view. But you see here that it lists a gat, which is a wine press. And it's telling us that, what? That according to Rebbe, if you wash it with ash and water, it's going to be okay. Now notice that here we are talking about, according to Rashi, where it was not, It was not pitched with tar, and our Mishnah was pitched with tar. So that's one distinction. But in any event, v'chachamim omrim, and the rabbis say, the rabbis answer it. They disagree with Rebbe. They say it's not going to be sufficient to do an ash water wash here in this situation. Even though it's not tarred up, ain't going to work. Umoide Rebbe bekan konim shel goyim she'en asurin. But Rebbe Yehuda Nasi does agree that even though he's lenient in one regard, as we just said, but he's machmir in a different regard. How is he machmir? He's machmir in the case where you've got jugs belonging to Gentiles that they are forbidden. If these are jugs made out of clay, even though they're not mezufafin, they're not pitched with tar, shasurin ad shimalem gimel yamimayim. They're forbidden to be used until you fill it up for 3 days with water. Umaran me'es le'es, and you pour them out or something from one day to the other, something like that. I forgot what ma'aran means. But this is something we talked about earlier in the Gemara, Avoda Zara daf lamed gimel amud aleph, says Rashi. So there is a process of purifying them, but absent that water 3-day process of purifying them, Rebbe will say that they are not permissible. Okay. Uma hefresh bein zelezeh. And what is the difference between this case and that case? What is the difference? Ze machniso bekiyum, ze ein machniso bekiyum. One is, the purpose is for preserving the kinusa shel kankan. The purpose of putting things in these utensils is to keep it for a long time, the wine for a long time, so it absorbs more readily. The other place, the wine press, it comes, it goes, it flows, gets washed, but it's not like being kept there. Even if it's used constantly, eventually gets washed. Apparently, it's not a storage thing. So when you store something, it gets more into the solid of it. Now, what about if these things are made not out of clay but out of wood or out of stone? Yenagef. Apparently, everybody holds. You do a niguv, which is everybody will be modeh. The machlokes is only by clay, but when it comes to eitz or evans, wood or stone, everybody agrees you wash it with ash and water. And if they were pitched with tar, so far we've been talking in this price where there's no pitch of tar, like Rash said, but if they are pitched with tar, asurin, then forget about it, says Rashi, achi klof, unless of course you peel it. Got to peel it away, and then you are good to go. Weiter. V'yotanan, more raise an objection to the last clause of the Brisa. But didn't we learn in the Mishnah that in the case of a stone wine press, that a Gentile lined with pitch, one may cleanse it, and it is pure? V'yotanan gat shel even shezifsa goy, that a goy pitched, menagvo v'hitahoiro. Didn't we say that you just wash it with ash and water and his tar? So why here at the end we say if it's mezufafin, if it's pitched, it's asurin, we said at the end of the brayso. In our Mishnah we said if it's pitched, so it doesn't matter. You wash it with ash and water and then it's tar. Right? So Rashi says, V'tanan, shall even afilu zifso menagvo divrei hakol. Everybody seems to agree to that. All you have to do is wash it with ash and water if it's made out of stone and it's pitched. With the Rebbe, and according to Rebbe, Yenagev b'shel eitz. And according to Rebbe also, even if it's made out of wood, we don't just say no good. Rebbe says in our Mishnah, apparently says Rashi, that if it's made out of wood and it's tarred, you can go ahead and also wash it with stone and water, just like if it was made out of stone. But here in the Bryce it says, afilu b'shel even, even if it's made out of stone, divrei hakol asur, and everybody apparently holds if it's pitched, then it's asur, unless of course you peel it. But in our Mishnah we didn't have a requirement to peel it. We said that even just to wash it with ash and water is fine. And the wood one, Rebbe said even wash with ash and water. Kasha b'shel even divrei hakol. So we have a problem, a stira, in the case of even, according to everybody's view, and b'shel eitz. So when it comes to eitz, we have a kasha for Rebbe, because why here it seems to be like it's totally no good. In our Mishnah, Rebbe seems to say it is good. So how do we resolve this problem? As dilemma. Ve'otnan guys shel even shezif sagoy menagvo ve'humatayro masisin delo dorach po brayso dorach po. So we say that our Mishnah, the reason our Mishnah is lenient, is because even though it was pitched, but there was no trampling by the goy of grapes on it. However, in the brayso, we're talking about when we say that it was pitched, we mean it was pitched and the goy did trampling of grapes on the vat. So that creates the difference in halacha. Amar Mar, the master said, Hagat v'amechetz v'amishpach shel goyim. Rabbi Matir benigu v'chachamim oisrin. So the master said above, with regards to the winepress and the ladle and the funnel that belong to Gentiles, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi permits them by cleansing with the ash and water, and the rabbis deem them forbidden. So this is talking about from cheres, from clay, and Rabbi permits benigov. If you just take some ash and water, it's fine according to Yehuda Nasi. This is because they don't have any pitch, any tar on it, as we explain, and Rashi points out here. So now we say, but didn't we learn in our Mishnah, shocheres, when it's made out of clay, afal pi shekolaf et hazefet, even if you peel the, what do you call it, the tar, harezu asura, it's going to be forbidden, even if you peel the tar, we said in our Mishnah. So how can Rebbe say in the Brisa that if you just take, okay, if it's not tarred, he says you can just do an ash water cleaning. But if it is tar, we said even peeling tar is no good in our Mishnah. Seems to be a contradiction. Amar Rava said, Seifa the Masnisin Ason l'Rabbanan. Okay. But let me go back to the question a minute. Vana Rashi says, Vana Tanan Shecheres Av Bisha Kilev Es Hazefet Arizu Asura. If it's made out of cheres, even if you peel the pitch, it's going to be forbidden. Alma Filu Rabbi Cheres Gufe Bola. So that would seem to imply that even according to Rabbi, the clay should have presumably absorbs the wine, the clay itself. So that's why it doesn't help to peel the tar. Apparently ash and water should be insufficient. Even if you didn't do stepping, or the guy didn't step the grapes on it. And for sure here, the ukminon brisa the dorach ba. And for sure here, the brisa where we said that the brisa is talking about a case where the guy did press grapes on it. For sure, Rabbi should say it's forbidden by the clay vat. But he says here he's lenient, and there is tough, so the difference is why. So Rashi says, say for the Masisi Nasul Rabbanan. So it means like this, that the Mishnah is really going like the view of the rabbis, not like Rebbe. That's the difference. The Rabbanan shall Evan, the Rabbanan are saying, by stone, kilo dorach ba, if it's made of stone and the guy did not step on the grapes on it, Yinagiv, then you could do an ash water cleaning. Shel eitz, and if the vat is made out of wood, Yiklof, then you need to peel the tar away. Shel chares, and if it's made out of clay, Asura, it's forbidden. Ule Rebbe, and according to Rebbe, Shel Evan, if it's made out of stone, Shel eitz, or out of wood, Yinagiv, you can do a cleaning of ash and water. Shel chares, and if it's made out of clay, Yiklof, just peel the tar away. Kedektani bebraysa, that was explained in the braysa. The keshe eino mezufefes sogi beniguv, and if does not have tar on it, so then it's sufficient just to wash it with ash and water, like in the braysa. Alma mezufef, but in the Mishnah where it is tarred, Rebbe would say you have to peel the tar away. Alma mezufefes yinage v'sharyo. Apparently, if it is tarred, it would be enough. That seems to imply that if it was tarred, it would be really enough. Our brisa would seem to imply if it's not tarred, then you wash it with ash and water. But if it is tarred, Rashi says, Mesufefes yinagev v'sharya. It's enough, again, the same thing, with ash and water. But I'm not sure where he gets that from. But Rashi says earlier that Shecheres Yiklof, that according to Rebbe, if it is tarred, you need to peel it. So that seems to Rashi a little bit unclear. It says two possibilities for Rebbe. But be that as it may, the Gemara answers the question by saying that that according to Rava, the Seifa the Masisi and Asan Rabbanon, that basically when it says there's nothing you can do about a Cheres one, that's talking about, knows where the issue was. Goyim, Rebbe Mati Benigov, Chacham Oisrin. We said that if these things are made out of clay, Rebbe is lenient by saying you can do an ash water cleaning, because apparently they're not pitched with tar. So Rebbe is lenient, and the rabbis are strict. That's what we say in the Brisa. But in the Mishnah, I'm going back a little, I apologize, but it's a good review. In the Mishnah, just to make sure we get it clear, in the Mishnah, it says that if it's cheres, even if you peel it, it's forbidden. So then the Gemara says, Rava is saying that's really only the view of the rabbis. In other words, there's really no contradiction because that's the rabbis. And here we're saying that the rabbis are strict. Rebbe Yehuda Nasi is lenient. Over there we mention a strict view, but if you understand that that's only the view of the rabbis, that Rebbe Yehuda Nasi, even in the Mishnah, will disagree, so then there's no problem. Okay. Dorash Rava taught as follows. If one has a tank of wine used by Gentiles, he must seal it in order to render it, scald it, is to heat it up good, in order to render it permitted. Dorash Rava, Nave Arseichu. Okay. Rava Kihava Mishader Gulfei Leharpania. When Rava would dispatch empty kegs to Harpania, apparently sending it with Goyim. Okay, empty vessels. Okay. So then what would he do? He would turn them over, placing them in their sacks on their openings, and seal the sacks on their brims, so that the Gentile carriers would not be able to use them for wine. So Rashi says these were like two chasimos. Like basically, he would be very concerned, make sure that there's no way that the guy is going to use these vessels. Okay, so it says here, Sochif lehu apumayu vechosim lehu abirtzayu. Ksover, why? Kodavar she michnesu lekiyum. Since these vessels are used to preserve wine, afilu, now these were new ones apparently, or kosher ones, but he wanted to make, since the types of items used to preserve wine, he wanted to make sure the goyim do not use them. He treated it with strictliness. Afilu lefisha, not to leave it in the hands of a goy even for an hour. Gazru b'rabban, and that's how he held. He held that any vessel that is used to preserve, apparently for preserving wine, afilu ein moisra le'chavim elefisha, even you give it to idolatry only for an hour, because of Rabban, and the rabbis said it's forbidden, kiyayin atzma, just like wine. Kiyech the law leisei l'shiyah, so you don't bring to use it for preserving wine, biyad chavim, in the hands of a guy. So it's like maybe to prevent you as a gezerah that you shouldn't do it in the future, to give them wine to hold, so you don't give them even these type of containers to hold. Okay. Bame menagvan. How do you do this nigov? We talked about it, the ash water mixture. How do you go about it? Rav Amar b'mayim. Rav says it's done with water. Rav Bar Chana Amar be'efer, with ash. Rav Amar b'mayim v'lo be'efer. Really? You think Rav meant you just do it with water and you don't even use ash? Rav Chana Amar be'efer v'lo b'mayim. You think Rav Chana meant with ash and not with water? You really think so? Would that be called nigov? That would be called rechitza, maybe. Nigov is mashma something else. Elo, Rav Omar b'mayim v'hu adin le'ofer. Rav said with water Vehu adin le'efer. What that means, Rashi says, is tchila. First you would put water. Vehu adin shetzarich efer. And the law is also that you need efer. Achareo, afterwards. So Rav would just use water first, and afterwards the ash. Afterwards you need maim achreim. Afterwards you add water. You add the ash. So Rav Amar maim uadin leifer. Rav Rechano Amar leifer uadin lemayim v'lo pligi. And they're not arguing. They really just talking about different situations. Beretivasa ha beretivasa ha beyavashasa. Beretivasa, when there's moisture, the wine, Rashi says, sheyesh po lachluchis yayin noisen efer tchila. When it has some wine, the thing that we're talking about cleaning, when it has wine in it, of moist wine, you have to put the ash first there in order to clean it out until it's dried or something like that. You've gotten rid of that moistureness. The guva, that's, I guess, because you're making it dry. Through this type of ash water process, you're drying it out and cleaning it out. So you first put the ash. So when it's moist, first you put the ash until it's dry. And then you put the water. But when the item is dry, and you're concerned that it has some yayin that you want to get rid of, but it's dry, first you put the water, and then you put the ash and you rub it. So they are not disagreeing, they're just talking about two different cases. That's all for the moment. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.